Welcome to Paranormal Central, broadcasting live from Central California with your hosts Jeffrey Gonzalez and Alan Thomas. Broadcasting video worldwide at paranormalcentral.net and broadcasting audio on the... Are you ready to witness something you cannot explain?
Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Paranormal Central, broadcasting live from the bottom left-hand corner of the Nevada Triangle, in a city called Fresno, California. Hello everyone, my name is Jeffrey Gonzalez. I am your host for the show. I'm also the founder of a group called the Sanger Paranormal Society. I have been investigating the paranormal going on now 14 years, so I'm just not up here talking about it. I'm actually living it. I have a team. Member of that team sitting right here to the right-hand side of me, my co-host, Mr. Alan Thomas.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see you, and good to see you in chat.
Thank you for showing up wherever you may be around the world. We are broadcasting live HD quality video right now on live stream on Sundays at 6 o'clock p.m. If you are watching us on the rebound during the week, that's the time we broadcast live. It's on Sundays, 6 o'clock p.m. Pacific West Coast time. So if you want to jump on board and catch us about that time, then you can. You can also get on the chat, and that's about a couple hundred people do that as well on Sundays. So the chat usually gets really crazy on Sundays. So, all right, well, thank you very much for showing up. We have a killer show, like we do every week today. We have a producer-director by the name of Jon Gress, who is, for those who have been involved in the paranormal or just like the paranormal, who has been researching different paranormal subjects, the one-word name Anunnaki. If you know that, then you know this guy, because in 2005, he was producing and directing a movie, and then something happened.
I wonder what happened.
What happened? I don't know. But I decided to send him a message to see if he could come out in the open and talk to somebody. And I got him to come on the show today and to talk about what happened maybe, in 2005. And so we can figure out, what's going on with the movie, if anything. But from what I heard, he is producing a series called The Anunnaki. And, I think this is his first interview since then. So since we're talking first interview in 10 years, I think, but don't quote me on that. I think the last time he said he had an interview was from Amsterdam, but I don't know how long ago that was. So a lot of people who are now watching us right now are aware of Jon Gress because the Anunnaki, it's a subject we talk about here, back and forth. We talk about who was first, the chicken or the egg? You know what I'm saying? Back 10,000, 20,000, a million years ago, who knows? Who was first on Earth? All right.
I wonder if he knows.
You know what? I don't know. Something piqued his interest to get him involved in this movie, and that's Mr. Jon Gress right there. So let's get him on the line. You know what? Let me go ahead and... Mr. Jon, are you there?
How you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, very good.
All right, so we're going to put down the screen here for you real quick, and then we're going to help and get you on board. So let's go ahead and...
There we go. Can you see us?
I can see you.
All right,
on.
Cool. So we're bringing down the screen. Hold on a second.
Love the set.
Cool.
Good.
Cool. So we're going to go ahead and get into this. Just to let everybody know, we're not going to have Heidi on tonight because we're probably going to take the full time with Mr. Jon here, and we're going to be talking about the Anunnaki and just different things in general, paranormal maybe. We're going to see where he's coming from and go from there. So we're going to get him on the screen right now. Alan is working on it, and then we're going to go ahead and get on with it. There you go.
Much better.
There you go. Jon, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
All right. Well, let's crank him up a little bit. Got him going. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the Invisible Man, Mr. Jon Gress, coming out of the... you've been gone for a while, dude. Were you kidnapped? Were you, held hostage in Mexico? What...
I've been out of sight, but not out of mind.
Okay, let's go. That's good. That's good. So, okay, well, everybody, Mr. Jon Gress, for those, you have a lot of followers. Everybody knows who you are in the paranormal world. If you're a fan of the Anunnaki, then you know who this guy is. This guy has been around since 2005 because he was involved in a project. And I'm going to give the mic, I'm going to hand the mic right over to you because I know there's a lot that you want to say and a lot to talk about. You're going to show a lot of stuff tonight on the screen. You and I had a little talk yesterday via Skype because we wanted just to make sure that everything was working properly, and you were showing me some videos and stuff.
They're saying in chat the guest audio needs to come up.
Okay.
A little bit.
All right. Okay, so... so we're going to do a lot of stuff tonight. So hopefully, if your voice doesn't give out, we can go an hour and a half, 2 hours. We'll see how your voice holds up. What do you think?
I'm with you. However long you guys want to go, it's good with me. I know we got a lot of cool stuff to talk about.
Right.
And going from our conversation yesterday, just a lot of really interesting and cool ideas and cool stuff. We can go however your format, how much time you wanna go.
Cool. No, we're gonna have you the full 2 hours.
I like your set too. That is pretty cool. How you all darked out behind you and everything.
Well, you probably have the top secret stuff back that you want to show us. Whatever. I get it. So, okay, well, you know what? Let's go ahead and introduce you to everyone out there who's not familiar with you and what you do. Go ahead and just introduce yourself, Jon.
Okay, well, first, there's a lot of people who probably have a lot of misconceptions about who I am. So we'll kind of start there, and I actually have some pretty cool stuff, which hopefully I'll be able to share with you via screen share. We'll see how that goes. But as the people who do know about me know, I'm probably in these circles most known for starting a project which was called One Anunnaki, which really dated back to late 90s, really, when we really started research and development. And we'll get into a little bit more of that because that's some of the stuff that we want to talk about. But what I should probably disclaim right off the bat is a lot of people have a misconception about who I am. While I am approaching this story and have approached this story because I think it's just one of the most fascinating and as time has gone on, more in-depth stories that I've ever seen. A lot of people have a misconception of what angle I come at this from, and a lot of people will tend to say, I get comments now and then of, oh, I'm disappointed you don't believe this, or you take this kind of spin, or this. And really, I don't take any kind of spin. I'm not really in the circle of people who's preaching any one particular idea about the Anunnaki. And really, in a few minutes, we'll get into sort of how I got into the Anunnaki, and that's really probably the best, one of the best places to start to give you an idea of where my angle or approach is. But I'm a filmmaker and a storyteller, and that's what I do. Since I was very little, my love and my passion has been movies and music and visual effects, and it's really never changed. It's what I've always loved to do. And as a we talked about music yesterday, and we talked about movies and that kind of thing. As a musician, as a movie maker, as a producer, as a visual effects artist, really they're all kind of similar and one and the same in that we're trying to tell a story, either visually or in an auditory kind of fashion. And my approach to the Anunnaki story is that I feel it's truly one of the greatest stories that needs to be told, and I'll go into why that is. For those of you who know me from the creation of the movie, starting way back when, and there's been a lot of misnomers and misconceptions about that I was abducted by aliens, that I was suppressed by the government or the Illuminati, or the list goes kind of on, and people's imaginations run wild and rampant. There's life is complicated, and there's some things that I have to sort of I'll address very easily, so that we can kind of get everything out on the table and we can move on to the really interesting part of this. So the first part of it is, which a lot of people are not going to want to hear. There are some things that I can talk about, and there are some things that I can't talk about. And when I first set up doing the movie, the reason I can't talk about a lot of the stuff is because I have what's known in the business as an NDA, or the easiest way to describe an NDA is that there are certain things that you can't divulge. And a lot of people, immediately start crying conspiracy and hoax and whatever they want to cry. But the fact of the matter is, in our industry, in the movie industry, in the visual effects industry, in many industries, scientific, computer, software, a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA, is a very commonplace thing to have. So in the course of the initial creation of our the core group of people who set up our movie, we have a very strict NDA, non-disclosure agreement, where I cannot talk about really anything having to do with the business aspects of the movie, and that encompasses a lot of things, which makes life very complicated for me when I've got a lot of friends and fans who want to know what's going on. So over the years, and the reasons for it, I can't get into, but let me kind of lay a hypothetical out, and maybe everyone can kind of draw their own conclusions and deductions from this. If you're dealing with what at the time that I started this movie was a highly controversial and taboo subject.
Yep.
Everybody knows that now the landscape has changed, and there's been a lot of great, series and television shows and documentaries about ancient aliens and this. So the landscape is not the same as it was when I first started this. When I did first start this, however, it was a very highly controversial and taboo subject, approaching the fact that, you're going against basically everyone. You're going against the creationists, you're going against the Darwinists and the scientific community, because we're taking the kind of angle that we're not going at this, and never intended on going at this as a sci-fi Hollywood blockbuster type of thrill ride. We also sort of, in a way, alienated, no pun intended, the whole UFO and ancient alien crowd, because they want to see, a big Hollywood thrill ride, and that's not the intent of this movie. It never was. The intent of the movie always was to tell the story as accurately as possible and as objectively as possible.
Wow.
So
that's cool, really.
That being said, having such a highly controversial subject matter at the time that we put the group together, there were a lot of people who were very concerned about their affiliation with the movie. They were concerned about their affiliation, even just being related to anything having to do with the subject matter. So that's about all I can really say about that. The NDA, while the landscape has changed, my NDA has not changed. So, sure. It's been highly frustrating for a lot of people, including myself in a lot of regards, because there's a lot of times I just want to try to tell people what's going on. However, because the subject matter of the movie, we knew it was going to be a big visual effects movie from the very beginning. It was, when I wrote it to be a big visual effects movie. And when I wrote it, there was a lot more to it than just writing even a movie, because I'm a visual effects artist and I teach people visual effects, I sort of wrote it as a case study in showing people how you could accomplish everything that you're not supposed to do on a first film. I've never been of the belief that you should limit yourself in what you want to do. I've always been of the belief that, if you're passionate about your art, regardless of what that art is, you should go for it, and there's a way to make it happen, no matter how you want to address it. So, knowing that the movie was going to be a gigantic visual effects movie from the very beginning, we had well over 2,500 visual effects shots in the movie. For a movie of this size, it's sort of unheard of. But I knew that I was going to have to train and handpick and train people to work with me on the movie. So as such, when I was negotiating the NDA in the movie, I made it really clear. I said, hey, look, for me to bring on this many people to work on the movie, I'm going to have to, while I'll have my artists have NDAs with us as well, not to release things. However, I need to be able to show off some of the stuff we're doing. I need to be able to, do promotion for the movie. I need to be able to show off some of the cool visual effects shots. So there were things that I could show, and really the stuff that I'm limited to not talking about is really the business end of it. Now let's sort of fast forward just briefly here to today. The landscape has changed with regard to many things, with regard to the subject matter, where it's a little more accepted today than it was, to put it mildly. In addition, my work in visual effects and R&D on very cutting-edge technologies has jumped never to where I thought it would ever be able to be at this point.
Light years.
And my vision for the movie, my vision for the subject matter was always to be able to present to people this topic of the Anunnaki in such a way that I could show them the evidence, and we're going to go back and go into all this in more detail, but to be able to show them the evidence and let them decide their own conclusion with unbiased, very objective evidence, And if you look at the books that came out way back when we first started talking about this, most of the books really, even though we had photography at the time,
right?
You look at a lot of the books and they had these hand-drawn sketches that looked like children drew them, and really it was kind of ridiculous in my mind. Mm-hmm. So I've always been of the frame of mind that I want to bring this story to people in as big a way as possible and as accurately as possible, and bring them enough detailed information to allow them to decide for themselves. So we have this sort of dichotomy here between the movie and the legend of the movie, and what my goal has always been in trying to bring this subject matter to people. And people become fixated on legend. They become fixated on, well, in this case, they're fixated on the movie. When's the movie? When can I see the movie? And yes, I want the movie to come out. Trust me, I've been working on this thing for many, many years. I want to be able to show this as badly as anybody else does. However, probably everybody will really enjoy the movie, but for me, it's a little bit anticlimactic, because for me, the movie, getting into the backstory of the movie just a little bit, at the time, because it was such a taboo topic, the only way we could really make this fly was to wrap the subject of the Anunnaki into a science fiction. And we basically said, okay, well, the subject is so controversial at the time that maybe if we wrap this in a science fiction and be able to show the characters of the Anunnaki in ancient Sumerian stories, show the plot lines, show all the relationships between the characters within the confines of this science fiction, it'll be a little bit more palatable to people, and people will be able to digest it a little bit easier, because it's within the confines of a science fiction, so it doesn't immediately and directly challenge their beliefs, or their belief system. So that being said, and I make, I have this new video series and some other stuff that I was showing, but you know, this is the screenplay for One Anunnaki.
Wow.
And I've actually I have some loopholes in my NDA, which we talked about yesterday as well, because I'm on the same side of the people who are interested in seeing the movie and seeing the story for the most part. I'm on their side. I want to share the story, but I'm in this frustrating predicament where we can't do certain things until certain other things happen. So in the meantime, I said, well, it's sort of an unprecedented thing, but maybe I'll just let people read the screenplay and put the story out there so they can see what the story actually is that we're shooting in the movie, and they can sort of maybe understand some of the facets having to do with the visual effects in the movie and having to do with the sheer size of the movie. When you run into the people who don't understand what's happened with the movie, the gamut is pretty wide. There's people who are just they don't understand the movie making process. They don't understand how much goes into a movie. You also have the other kind of portion of the population that's unfortunately the me population, who it's like, you owe me giving me your movie for free and giving it to me right now. What's the holdup?
Right.
And I'm quick to point out to these people, I'm happy to watch your movie when you bring this out.
Right.
And a lot of movies take a lot longer than people think to make. You look at a movie like Sky Captain, I think took 10 years to get to the point where people could see it. There's other movies, there's a whole list of them. If you go online and do a search, there's a list of a lot of very famous movies that have ranged from 5 to 20 years, in some of them not even getting greenlit for 10 years until they could make it. So it's a big challenge. It's a big investment. It's a big venture going into making a movie, especially a movie with an independent movie of this size, with again over 2,000 special effects sequences, and one that I was using as a case study for how to do everything that you're not supposed to do in an independent film. And people ask, what does that mean? It means the things that most people in movies, and rightfully so, I'm not bashing them, the people who tell you and are giving you good business advice, if you're going to make an independent movie, the old kind of standard is keep it at one bedroom, 2 people, 3 people in one bedroom, and make it a dramatic talking heads kind of thing. And I agree with them. In that context, you will get a movie made quickly and reasonably priced and with little headache. There's no doubt. However, that's extremely limiting if you're a person who's a fan of science fiction or visual effects or, that kind of thing. That's not going to fly. And I make movies because I love to make movies, not because I've got someone holding a gun to my head telling me this is what you have to do. So that being said, our case study involved doing all the things that you're not supposed to do in an independent movie, such as, I'll kind of address them side by side. You're not supposed to have a lot of people in the movie. You're supposed to have, 2 to 3 main characters. We had a full cast and hundreds of extras in this movie, including children. We had children in the movie, which is very difficult to deal with when you're dealing with, shooting big scenes with classrooms full of children or children on locations. You have to make special accommodations for them. We had some environmental things where it was very hot then very cold, and got to have special places for the kids to go where they can only work a certain amount of hours, and there's all kinds of limiting conditions. Don't work with animals. We work with animals. Don't work in any kind of crazy conditions. Work in a single room in a single location. We had dozens of locations ranging from the swamp to chasing an airboat in a helicopter in the swamp, to underwater, to having ambulance and special.
So this was a high budget then. I mean, you're talking some money here, man.
It was not a cheap. It was not cheap. let's say
I can tell you right.
But at the same time, it's important. For me, it's important that people understand this was not meant to be a Hollywood thriller kind of thing. The things that were brought into that were kind of crazy from a production standpoint were brought in to tell the story accurately and to immerse people into the story. So we didn't go. We did it as reasonably as we possibly could. We have some fantastic locations in the movie of places that don't exist anymore. We shot in this native Indian village that doesn't exist anymore. We shot in the Museum of Archaeology, which doesn't exist anymore. So we've got some really cool locations, and again, in helicopters, in the air, underwater, and that's not going into all the visual effects shots on blue screen stage, green screen stages, and I think we probably shot on 6 or 7 different sound stages. So, there was a lot that went into the movie, and but again, my whole point really is that when you look at the production of a movie, one of the things that people don't understand about a movie is, and the best analogy I can usually give is when people love a book series like a Stephen King series or one of these kind of series, that the average size of a book is 500 to 1,000 pages, maybe more. That 500 to 1,000 pages is done with great detail and given lots of depth and detailed information about everything ranging from the location to what's in the character's mind to just details about the action that's going on at the time. When you deal with a movie, the average length of a normal movie to get into a theater and to make the theater money and the motion picture company money is going to be in the range of about 90 minutes. You can pull off a 2-hour movie, a 120-minute movie if you're a big, you're a big property or you've got a good,
Steven Spielberg.
You've got a good following, or it's based on a bestseller. They might be able to get away with a 2-hour, but it's pretty unusual to see a 2-hour movie come out as a first movie or as a small movie, because contrary to what people believe, the motion picture industry from a theatrical standpoint is really not about art. It's about real estate. It's about how many times can I rent that seat for a showing. So if you just put those numbers together, you got a movie that's 90 minutes, you get X number of showings in a day from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. or whatever. You up that to 2 hours, and you cut out maybe 2 or 3 seatings of however many people fit in that theater. So it's not a loved thing to have a longer movie. So all that being said, you take a Stephen King book, let's distill all these factors. You have a Stephen King book or like a Stephen King book with tons of detail of 500 or 1,000 pages, and you need to distill it down to 120 pages because basically each page of a movie script equals approximately a minute of screen time. So where does, from 1,000 pages to 120 pages, where does that other 800 or 900 pages of information go? Well, it goes out. It has to be omitted or inferred or, creatively distilled down. And that's why most people are pretty unhappy when they see a movie that used to be a best-selling book, because
a lot of
really there's just no way of fitting that amount of information into a 2-hour movie.
Right.
Now, that being said, look at the size of the Bible. The biblical stories, as we talked about yesterday, and we'll talk about some more, are based on ancient Sumerian stories. You're dealing with even more pages in the Bible now. So how do you distill? How is it possible to distill thousands and thousands and thousands of pages down to 90 pages? It's not possible. And that's the bottom line. The bottom line is it's not possible, and I've always known that it was never possible. So coming full circle back to the original sort of opening statement, people get fixated on this movie, which was a 90-minute introduction at a time and space where the subject was very taboo and required a gentle introduction. now that the landscape has changed and people are a little more open to these ideas, and it's not as there's no way to address all that information in such a small format, really. Um, Throw into the mix of that the fact that in Hollywood, most major motion picture companies have not really released anything unique, anything really new in maybe 5 to 7 years. Everything that comes out of Hollywood, for the most part, aside from the smaller movie companies or art movie companies, are going to be an adaptation or a sequel or a remake. If you look at all the big movie companies, and the bottom line to them, it's not that they hate creativity. They're business people, and they have to satisfy their shareholders. They need to make sure that they're placing their bets on making the best bet they possibly can. It's just business, you know. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of where the movie's, you know, where it started. We'll go into the spark for the movie in just a few minutes, but it kind of gives you an idea of why I haven't been able to talk about it that much. And over the years, as I've been developing more and more technology and really, really cool things to be able to actually show this story the way that I want to show this story, it's allowed me to sort of reanalyze my NDA and say, okay, well, what can I actually show? How can I I'm not skirting or circumventing the NDA by any means, because I would never, you know, do that to the people I'm working with. But at the same time, I do think that people really need to see this story, and there's some really great stuff. And the way I always try to look at things in a win-win situation. If I can show people the basis for the story and show all the cool stuff that we've created and do what I originally intended to do, which is lay out the whole story, that just makes the movie more interesting and helps support the movie. It's not cannibalizing off the movie, if that makes sense.
Well, you're kind of lucky in, like, we're in the beginning where a lot of people didn't know what an Anunnaki was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it was kind of getting traction or whatever. And now today, where nearly everyone is familiar with it, I mean, in a marketing aspect, I mean, it can't be all bad right now. I mean, like, releasing it now would be like, bam, you know, a lot of people are going to be really into it just because of that.
But the surprising thing about it is, while the the conspiracy part of this is really well known now, and the whole Anunnaki thing from a conspiracy standpoint is really well known, what's really surprising is that the basis of the stories is still completely unknown and in the dark, and people just really, you know, you have the couple of camps. You have the Von Däniken camp and the Sitchin camp, and, you know, a few other splinter camps here and there. But there are very few people who are really going back and looking at the original material and not taking some sort of axe to grind position. And that's really, number one, it's one point that I find very interesting, but it's a point that I really want to drive home with people. You know, look at this stuff for yourself and decide for yourself what it is. There's a lot of things that just using a little bit of common sense, you can arrive at some astonishing conclusions, and not all of them are, you know, tinfoil hat, you know, crazy. A lot of them are really soundly foundational, and Jeff and I talked about some of the stuff yesterday, how deep some of this stuff runs in a shocking kind of fashion. But so that gives you a little bit of idea of where we can go, and kind of putting that behind us. So I hope everybody kind of has an idea of that I didn't get abducted by aliens, and I wasn't, you know, directly kidnapped by any power that be, you know, let's put it that way. Has there been pressure on our movie from many sides? Absolutely. Have we come under attack? We've been under hacking attacks. We've been under, we've been let know that some of the stuff that we're doing is not liked, and that
the good stuff. Spill it. Come on.
Say, let's say. But the thing even about that, and a lot of people immediately again cry conspiracy. Oh yeah, here's another person saying conspiracy thing. The thing that I kind of don't understand about all of this stuff, about the hacks and all this, is that I've never really even taken a controversial position about this. My position has always been sort of just to sort of lay out the stories side by side, and maybe that alone is threatening to some people. I don't know, but I'm really not one of those people who's coming out and saying, oh, here's this controversial story. While the story is controversial, obviously, I'm not grinding an axe by any means or trying to sell my position on anything. I'm just kind of laying out the pieces that are already there, but somehow people just don't know anything about, which is really interesting to me.
I thought, like I was thinking, like in the time frame of how long everything is, I didn't think it was any of all the things that you just said. I thought technology was what was doing it. Like 10 years ago, you couldn't, like, just take Star Wars, for instance. If they could do the things that they could do today, which they're doing now, in the first movie, it would have been like really a trip. You know what I mean? Now, Absolutely. Here you are working on a movie from way back then and probably did a whole bunch of stuff, and then the technology changed, making it where you could really do, show what you really were intending, and you were limited by technology, and now you're not,
Well, you're really dead spot on in one context, and that is that technology from a visual effects standpoint has changed dramatically and has, grown dramatically. So it didn't limit us from the beginning, but what it did allow us to do is to add to the movie. And as time went on, as we started seeing some new, it's like playing football. You see a hole and you just say, okay, we're going to go for it, because we have the opportunity to do that. We are mobile and a flexible kind of production. So there were many times where we said, we have this new technology. Why don't we just go back and add this scene that we originally wanted to do that wasn't possible back then? So the movie has definitively grown in the way of visual effects since the beginning. But at the start, they were close. I think at the start they were close to 2,000 effects. And when I say effects, I don't mean what most people do a visual effects movie. They say we had 2,000 visual or 100 visual effects shots. And a visual effects shot is a singular shot, like you against the blue screen and being extracted. That would be a visual effects shot. When I'm saying 2,000, I'm saying 2,000 sequences, which could be, each sequence could have 20 or 30 shots in it. So we went from about 2,000 when we started to probably well over 2,500, 3,000 in the end when we, we're at the stage where we're at now. So yes, you're 100% right. Things have grown, and the cool thing is technology has both helped us and hurt us along the way. One of the first things we had, which I can't go into because of the NDA, but it was a part where technology actually, or it was the industry marketing hurt us for technology, and there were some things that were not quite truthful that some new technology came out saying it could do, and that put a little splinter for us at the very beginning. But again, it's like anything else. We're used to that. That's part of production, and you roll with the punches, and you kind of move on. So with that being said, maybe we should rewind sort of back to.
So what piqued you into getting into the Anunnaki? What was it?
Okay, so this is, again, I've been interested in movies and music since I was very young, and I picked up my first camera, I think, at about 4 years old. I grabbed my dad's Super 8 movie camera, and I went around filming the landscape guy in the neighborhood, and I have a short clip of that on the new series. which is pretty funny. But by about 10 or 12 years old, I was regularly making movies, and I was starting to understand about researching movies, and I was a big Star Trek fan. And and actually, I have. Let me share my screen with you and see if you can see this, because this will make it a little more interesting than just seeing my face. And I'll try to share some stuff and we'll see how this looks. We sharing the screen yet there?
Oh yeah, we see it.
Okay,
like
so
parchment.
this is actually a little video clip that I put together for my new series, and I thought I'd show you a couple pieces as just sort of visuals. At about 12 years old, in Miami where I grew up, we had this very old used bookstore that was pretty popular, and I've always been a big science fiction fan. I loved the old Ray Harryhausen movies, and was always a big fan of all the monster movies and Twilight Zone series, and Star Trek series was always one of my favorites as well. While I don't really consider myself like a true Trekkie in the fanboy kind of sense, I was definitely a fan of the show from a production standpoint, because it was really my first inspiration of that. This is a really well-written show from a story context. And the thing that I really loved about it, as I researched a little bit more, was it was a great model for writing and for story, because Star Trek, I don't know how many people out there are aware of this, they had an entire universe of backstory built to the production, where any show that they did, for the most part, had to follow this big production Bible that had every detail from where the galaxy was sectioned off into, opposing forces of good and evil, and, fictitious races of creatures, and what the different classes of ships were, and how they were laid out, and what was on what deck. And they really had just everything laid out, and I was totally fascinated with that. And they had at some point they released sort of a consumer version of their production Bible, and it was this giant book, and it had like the layout of all the ships, and it had a whole bunch of backstory of all the characters and their families, and it was just really just an awesome piece of history from a science fiction standpoint. So I was really interested in getting this book, but it was super expensive, and I was just a kid. So I rode my bike down to this bookstore, and I did this little sort of mock-up of the scenario, so everybody kind of gets an idea, because I happened to find a place that was really similar to this store. And I walk into the store, and what was funny about this place was it was owned by this old guy, this grumpy old man, who, number one, he didn't really like kids too much, I think. He always gave you the eye like you were going to steal something when you walked in. And the place looked pretty much like this. It was just books everywhere, and he traded new and used books is what he did. But he was not a really nice guy. It was really funny. I have another friend who is a professional science fiction writer, and I happened to find him after about 10 years, and I happened to stumble upon, looking for a picture of this store, I stumbled upon an article he had written, and I found him by way of that he talked about this old grumpy guy that ran the store. So you walk in the store, and this old guy's eyeballing you and looking at you like you're going to steal something, and don't you have someplace else you need to be, and why are you keep coming in here every day, that kind of thing. So I'm looking for this Star Trek book, this really big book, and he's got books piled up everywhere in the store. And the science fiction section in the store was right next to, he wasn't a big science fiction fan, and he put it next to the alternative belief section, which you could see how those kind of go together, science fiction and UFOs and that kind of thing.
Right.
And the alternative beliefs, aside from having UFOs and stuff, it had other religions, and it had some New Age stuff, and then the New Age stuff kind of transitioned into the religious section. So you got the science fiction section, the alternative belief section, and the religious section all in the same area. So I'm going in the store, and I'm sitting down on the floor, and I'm looking for this Star Trek book. And just like this, I'm sitting there going through all the books in that section, and to my dismay, the book I'm looking for is not there. But he has these big piles of books that he's traded somebody else for, but hasn't had time to put away yet. And if you had the patience to go through them, you could sit and kind of go through everything and see if you found what you liked. So I'm going through these books, and I happen upon two books. The first book is Eric von Donigen's Chariots of the Gods, and the second book is Zecharia Sitchin's The 12th Planet. And at the time, I think both of these books were maybe a year or two old, so they were in relatively good condition. But they were the first time I'd ever seen books like this. And I'm looking through, and I'm there looking for Star Trek, and I see these spaceships, which these guys are claiming they're real, and I'm like, oh, this is really fascinating. This is really cool. And as I'm reading, the window for the store was behind me, and there wasn't much light in the store. And as I'm reading, this big shadow overtakes me, and it made it almost hard to see the book I'm reading. And it was really two shadows. And I look up, and it's this old man and this old woman, and they're dressed like in all black. They were very religious. I don't know what religion they were, but they were very religious and dressed in all black. And I'm sitting here with Eric von Donigen's Chariots of the Gods in my hand, and they're walking by me to get to the religious section. And the old man looks at me, and he sees what I'm reading. He takes a step closer. He's got this scowl on his face, and he points at me. And I mean, this is like I'm 12 years old, and this old man is pointing in my face. And he said, "You shouldn't be reading this. There's only one God, this Chariots of the Gods. There are no gods. There's just one God. And this is his book." And he reaches on a shelf, and he grabs a Bible, and he hands me the Bible, and he says, "This is the only book that's important, and this is the only book you should be reading. You're a young kid. You shouldn't be reading this." And he made an expletive, and he said, "This is the book you should be reading." So I take this book, and I'm gave kind of like this. I kind of gave this kind of reaction to it, and I didn't want to disrespect the old man, so I open up the book, and I'm thumbing through the book while he's there, and he and his wife leave. And the first chapter I thumb through is Genesis. And this paragraph in Genesis jumps out at me. And the paragraph is dealing with the creation of man. And it says, and I'll just let this go here. It says something to the effect of, "And God said, let us create man in our image," or some versions said, "let us make man in our image." And I look at this and I said, okay, surely there's a typo, surely there's a misprint. Here's this old man, he's pointing at me in the face and telling me there's only one God, but the book he hands me says, "let us," plural. And I run over back to where he was in the religious section. I pull another Bible. It was like a New International Version or something. And sure enough, it says the same thing. And I grab another one. It's like a King James version, and it says the same thing. And I grab a Jewish Bible, and I open it up and thumb through the Hebrew and look at the English translation on the side, and it says the same thing. So now I'm sitting here with these stack of Bibles in my hand, and Eric von Donigen's Chariots of the Gods, and Zecharia Sitchin's 12th Planet. And even as a kid, I know this is a great story. This is just a great story. Here is this person who's obviously spent his entire life believing something so intensely that seeing me reading a book to the contrary outraged him, and he doesn't even know what the book he's handing me says. And then we get into a whole range of things from there, of people's translations and people's inferences from that. But that was the original spark. That was the initial spark that let me know this is a great story. And I grabbed, I went up, haggled with the old guy to get both of the books, and I raced home and I devoured those books. And I went on from there to read, more of their books, more of Sitchin's books. other people's books, and as time went on, we get fast forward a little bit to where I'm in my early 20s, and I start writing some additional things. I wrote some screenplays, and they had changed to Star Trek changed to the Next Generation from, they had picked up from where sort of the original series left off and made the next jump into the future on the Next Generation. And I really thought that the writing on that show was a great evolution and really just took that whole concept to the next level. So I decided to try my hand at writing a few spec scripts for Next Generation. And I found it to be a really difficult process because there's so much backstory you need to learn about. And again, you have to write within, this isn't like writing a normal fiction where you can just kind of write whatever comes to your mind. You have to keep everything within the context of their universe. And there are some really hard and fast rules to that. And I've always been sort of the frame of mind when you teach, when you write something, that a great methodology for writing is being able to inadvertently teach people something that's real in the process or in the wrapper of a fiction. I've always kind of loved that idea and that concept. So I was also a big fan of like Stephen Hawking, and I'd read a bunch of really, theoretical physics kind of books and stuff. And I decided to try my hand at writing for Star Trek Next Generation, and I wrote 2 spec scripts, and I had a friend who worked at Paramount who said, well, if you write them and they're decent, I read them, I'll bring them to production. And I spent a lot of time writing them, and I thought I had a really cool spin on them. And I finished both scripts within a few months of each other, sent them in, and it takes them a while to go through the process where they stamp them as being received and, for review or whatever. And right after I got the notice that they've been received, my buddy calls me up and he says, I hate to tell you this, but there's not an official word on this yet, but they're canceling the series.
Oh, man.
And really the official word didn't come for a while after that, but at that point he said they're not going to be accepting any more scripts. You're good job, but sorry. So that was a huge disappointment, just because of the investment in time. So after that point, I decided that anything I write from there on would be for my own. It was going to be my own and for my own production, or for independent type production. And after taking a little bit of a hiatus and a little bit of a rest, the story I came back to was this story that was sort of nagging in my head for many, many years, which was the story of the Anunnaki. And so I decided at that point to go full boat into writing the screenplay for this first movie. And coming from the background that I did, I knew that the first thing that I needed to do was to do a lot of research into a lot more research than just reading, von Däniken and Sitchin's books. It's funny, you'll find a lot of people who base all of their information on a couple of one writer or 2 writers, and they don't question anything. And to me, that's like the same thing as the people they're questioning, who are people reading the Bible, who don't question where that material came from.
Now, you growing up, did you grow up in a religious family?
No.
Okay.
We were really not a religious family at all. I mean, I'd been in different religious institutions. I'd obviously seen Bibles, so I'd done that, but I was raised with a pretty open-minded family.
Okay.
I agree with you though. Like, I'm the same when it comes to, I read everybody's books, but I read everybody's books. You know what I mean? And then dig around, and then I loved when the internet came out and people started putting on the Book of Jasher and some of the other ones, Enoch and stuff like that, where it was giving you another different angle and almost like dovetails with the Bible kind of, and you see this big panorama open up that goes back a long time.
Yes, and you're hitting it right on. I mean, really, you're hitting exactly. You're almost saying verbatim how this worked out. Is that I'm sitting here researching for this screenplay, and number one, at the time there was not very much information out there. The internet was still in its infancy, and really, there were only two academic institutions at the time who were there and present at the actual digs in that region of the world.
Right.
In ancient Sumer, there was the University of Pennsylvania and the University of Chicago, and they were there for a certain period of time, and then the West was basically closed off to any archaeological digs. So what was interesting about that is the only places here that had academic sort of material where people were actually there and writing about the actual artifacts and the actual translations, not a translation of a translation of a translation, were at these two institutions. So my first trip was to the University of Chicago, and to see these artifacts for myself, or whatever artifacts they had. And when I got there, I was really excited to find that the original, some of the original people that were present at the digs, like Samuel Noah Kramer and some of these other guys, had written academic books about their findings at the time. And these were not mainstream books that were on sale anywhere, whereas now you might be able to find them. Back then you couldn't. But the university bookstore had them for sale. So I literally, I think, spent every penny I had and just grabbed every book that they had on every dig at, the dig at Ur and all those other ones. And I grabbed all that information and I came back and I started researching. And after I got through all of those books, I also realized that it was not nearly going to be enough, that I needed another way, and which dovetails right into what you just said. And I realized that in my family and other families who come over from Europe, a lot of times the only stories that you hear are word of mouth stories that are handed down from generation to generation. And I quickly realized that maybe one of the best ways to do this is to create sort of an open forum on the internet. And Yahoo Groups was big at the time. And I created a Yahoo group for regarding the Anunnaki, regarding anything having to do with the Anunnaki. And I had one rule in the group, and the rule was this. At the time, a lot of groups had a lot of rules. You had to go through the big form of all their rules and regulations to join the group. Mine had one. The rules was this: it was not a democracy. I could boot you if you were disrespectful to anybody. The only rule is you have to respect everyone else's stories and ideas, no matter how crazy they may sound. You be respectful of each other. If you're disrespectful, you're booted. Aside from that, I want to hear everything you have to say, no matter how crazy it sounds. And I did hear everything that everybody had, and really that was, you could think of that as Pandora's box. That opened that research into, combined with the research I'd done before, that is where kind of all the craziness started, and where this story expanded from being only about the Anunnaki into, tons of other subjects that were all intertwined and sort of connected with the Anunnaki.
It's an amazing topic. I mean, and there's so much stuff around the world that, like in South America, for instance, South Africa, all in the whole region of South Africa, there's all these circles and stuff and huge, giant, footprints that are like 20 feet long. Yeah,
well, Jeff and I were talking about that last night. You've got things there in California. I've got things here that I've just found out a few weeks ago. Here in Florida, we had some crazy things that were discovered as well. So, kind of jumping back to the development of the story, as I'm researching all this stuff, I said, well, how am I going to really tackle this? Is a huge story just by the information I had. Going to after I went through Kramer's work and the work in the digs at from the two universities, I started going through some of the tablet translations that they'd found, like the Ziusudra epic, the Utnapishtim epic, the Gilgamesh epic, and some of these that had some additional pieces. And now you're starting to play detective. Now you're starting to have to piece together pieces of stories and see where they kind of plug in to other stories, where they kind of make connections. And I started, having to make a decision here. I said, well, how am I going to present this in the realm of the Anunnaki story? How is this going to, what's the best way to present this to people where, number one, I'm a filmmaker and a storyteller, so I don't want to bore people to death. I did not want this to be a documentary. I want it to be an interesting movie. So I had to get the characters correct. I had to get the facts correct. I had to get, which we'll go into in a little bit, I really wanted to get the history and the archaeology correct. But I also had to make this kind of interesting. So what was the best way to make it interesting? And again, I rewound back to sitting in the store with that old guy looking at me. And I said, everyone knows the biblical versions of these stories, but almost no one knows the derivations of the stories, where they came from, and the parallels, and what's different about the stories from the originals. And what was more shocking to me was that most people have no idea that the biblical stories are based on older stories that not only are a little older, but to give everyone here sort of a frame of reference, if let's say that I don't really know when the Bible was actually the formal version of the Bible was written, but I from what I understand, it's somewhere in the early hundreds, and modified maybe in the 1300s or something. But let's say the early hundreds. So if you take the difference in time from now to when the Bible was written, that's how long before that these original stories come from ancient Sumeria. So it's really quite dramatic and astounding how much older these original versions of the stories are. Then the next question I always get is, well, maybe it's just coincidental that these stories are, they're similar, but they're not really the same stories. But they're the same stories.
Yeah.
And the first one that so going back to my strategy for developing the story, I said, well, maybe the best way to do it is to take the biblical stories that everybody's familiar with, highlight some of the most famous ones, and then show the Sumerian Anunnaki parallels and what they really say, and show what the difference is between. Because to me, even if you're a person who's a devout, religious person, I would think you would still want to know what these older versions say, especially if this is, proven archaeology, that they found tablets that say the same thing that the biblical versions say, but they're, thousands of years older, and they're a little different. Maybe people don't want to know. Maybe they want to just put their head in the sand. But for me, that was the sort of interesting point. So my strategy then went to, which stories am I going to tackle and which ones fit the story. So the obvious ones were Genesis, the creation of man, because that one's obviously a big point of contention in all the camps. Then you have Noah's Ark, because Noah's Ark is probably the Ziusudra epic, the Pishtim, Atrahasis. All of these stories are probably some of the most well documented that I know of, that run parallel to the Noah story, or run parallel to the biblical story. So that was a sure one. That one was good. And while we got into that story, covering the deluge from completely, because there's a lot of controversy just around that in itself. Is it totally fictitious? Was the entire Earth covered? Was it a localized event? Was it a natural occurring event? Was it a created event? There's a lot to that. So that was the next one that we sort of covered. There were some really, really cool ones in here.
Did you cover the giants?
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Oh, yeah, okay.
The Exodus, Revelations. And then, going back to Noah's Ark, the Ark itself is a big sort of conspiracy theory wrapped in another conspiracy theory. Mm-hmm. And the ancient stories actually give us some hint to some pretty interesting differences. So we decided to use those as the first ones.
And I can hardly wait to see this thing. I mean, it's going to be interesting. Really
Well,
interesting.
again, and again, this is why I'm so excited about this new series, because in the, how do you approach? I've just rattled off a handful of things that each would be a movie.
Sure, yeah, and it is already.
Yeah. Each one of these has been a movie. You have a movie about Noah's Ark. You have each one of these could be movies. So how do you fit all of these things and the story of the Anunnaki and a science fiction into 90 minutes? You can really only touch on these things, which is why everybody's excited about the movie, and I agree, it's really super exciting stuff. However, I'm more excited about doing the series, and when I created this first movie, I said it was going to be a trilogy, thinking I might be able to fit into 3 movies, But as time went on, I quickly realized that there was no way I could even fit into 3 movies. It needed to be much more than that. So, my excitement about all these topics is in analyzing each one really carefully and looking at all the factors and components, because each one really is as interesting as the next one.
Did you ever come to a point where you think you know exactly what happened?
No, and Jeff and I talked about that last night.
I mean, I think I do, and then I'll go do a little more research, and then I know I don't have it.
Well, here's what I have to say about that, and that's sort of is probably going to be another production series later on after this series. But I've come to the conclusion over this many years of researching this stuff that we can get clues as to what happens in the context of a story. Aside from that, we have no idea what happens, and I think anybody out there who claims to know anything about anything is naive in the fact that if people don't want you to know something, I was just watching a Michael Tellinger episode on something he just did, and he makes a good point. He says it a little differently than I say it, but he makes a good point. If someone wants to create a bunch of disinformation, they really can. When I talked about this with Jeff last night, I was just running some sort of fictitious numbers. I have this slight theory that I call the ambiguity bomb theory, and that goes like this: if you've got a truth to something that people don't want you to know, and all they really need to do is tell 2 people slightly truthful, slightly ambiguous things, and now those 2 people will tell 2 people, you have the game of telephone, but because there's slight amounts of truth, but slight amount of not truth and ambiguity, you get this chain reaction, this viral disinformation that starts happening. And if you calculate the number of how that magnifies, and when I ran the number, it was just kind of a goof. I said, if the piece of truth was a grain of sand, and you do this viral multiplication, 2 people wind up with 2 competing stories, and people say, oh, it's not realistic. Well, look at like our political parties that are supposed to be on the same page. You've got 2 political parties that each have 5 to 10 splinters, all with competing viewpoints. So it's really quite logical to me. You take this one grain of sand, you take 2 people with opposing views, they split into 2 groups, they split into 2 groups, they split into 2 groups. And let's say this happens once a year, that this happens. After 75 years, there are more grains of sand than there are on this planet.
Yep.
So how would you possibly be able to find the real one? How could you possibly dig through all that disinformation? The best I could say is that there are strands of truth that just sort of make logical sense, and we can sort of determine within the context of the story if it makes sense or if it doesn't make sense. And I think that's really about as close as you can get. We've all heard stories about archaeological finds where they find something really amazing, these out of place artifacts, and then before anybody gets to see them, they disappear.
Yep.
We've all heard stories.
Then you have the Catholic Church that will be doing their own archaeology around the world, and then every time they find something of significance, they're either destroying it because people are worshiping it, or they're building a church on top of it so that they could do whatever they want underneath it, and they could be removing it or destroying it or distorting it, and
after
that's
having
happened
been
a long
to the Vatican,
time.
I would say that they're probably not destroying it, that they've probably got their own X-Files type warehouse like we do, because if you walk through the Vatican, I have never seen such a collection of amazing stuff in my life. And when you walk through, you say, your first thought walking through the Vatican is, my God, they've got everything.
They probably know about it, what it is. I mean, probably every clue you need is in there to come to some sort of truth,
And I believe that they're not stupid. I believe that they know, they're aware of all of this stuff. They're aware, and then you sort of have to sort of ask the question to yourself, is this disinformation and all of this stuff handed out because it's a conspiracy and they're covering it up, or is it all a conspiracy because they don't trust that people wouldn't just run amok and go crazy? The Men in Black kind of premise that people would go, haywire, which you really can't put past them for that, as well.
That's true.
True. Okay. All right. Well, you know what? We better get rolling on this. All right. So we now know the research. We now know why you chose this particular subject. The series that you're coming out with. You are going to put it out for free. Is that right?
Well, part of the series is going to be for free, and actually, the first series that I'm doing for free, this kind of short form series, is really, again, it's been frustrating for me as well as it's been frustrating for a lot of my friends and fans on, wanting to see something having to do with the Anunnaki. So this first series was sort of my thank you to them for their sticking around, their loyalty, and I said, I want to really be able to show you some of this stuff. And I know it's taken us a little time to get into some of this stuff here, but we really have set the tone and the precedent, the groundwork for all of the things we're about to talk about. So It was sort of important that we cover those. In the development of the movie, in all of that research, and in all of those years of doing R&D for high-end technologies and training people in visual effects and all that stuff kind of all comes together in this series. And what's super exciting about that to me is all the things that we've already talked about tonight so far, those all play a part in this. And my kind of the grand scheme, the grand idea behind that is that I give this 3 series to my friends and fans just as a way of saying, look, we really have done some cool stuff. This is not fictitious. We've, the movie's been in the can for a long time, so that in of itself in the movie making, field is a that's huge right there. So for people to believe that the whole thing is a conspiracy and doesn't even exist it's just ridiculous, and it's a little irritating to me, having hundreds of people who I've worked with and who have diligently been working on it, and all the people who put so much time and effort into it. It's just a nod of acknowledgement saying, good work, guys. Here I can start showing some of this stuff to people and letting them, at least give them a pat on the back and go, this is really some cool stuff. So that being said, what the second series is going to be, we're going to try to do a massive type crowdfunded series to try to do, and I'm going to be, this is not a hypothetical kind of pie-in-the-sky vaporware thing. This is already stuff we're already doing and already going to be showing to our free group. But we want to expand this, and once you start seeing some of this stuff, you'll instantly understand why we want to do it kind of on a big, massive scale. So that being said, let me just kind of roll right into all of that stuff. So when we started creating the movie, obviously it was a huge movie from a visual effects standpoint. And we're dealing with, again, the creation of man, Noah's Ark, Sodom and Gomorrah. We're dealing with ancient Sumeria. We're dealing with all of these things. All of these things have to be depicted somehow. This wasn't going to be one of those movies where, the person says, oh, back when I was in ancient Sumeria, and talks for 20 minutes, and that's the extent of showing it, we needed to actually show it. So the first thing we did was developed a lot of digital assets and a lot of 3D visual effects, R&D, entire virtual environments. I'm going to go ahead and show you some of those. Let me bring up the screen again.
Man, I'm going to have to figure out how to get on this little group thing.
I got the link is on my site right now.
Oh, okay.
On the Facebook wall.
I opened it up for you guys too, because you guys are sort of kin. the people who are in your group are pretty much interested in the same thing our group is. So
right.
I'm making it open. We're not going to leave it open for a long time. The free accessibility to everybody, I'm closing that up again. People didn't believe it the first time, so when I opened it up, people were going, "Oh yeah, it's a scam, it's a hoax." And then when people started saying, "Oh, it was really cool, I can't wait to see the next episode," everybody's like, "Well, when can I get in?" It's like, "Well, I told you."
Too late.
So we'll go through a couple of those, and actually let's talk about while we're going through the visual effects, the first one on the list, which is I sort of break down after I got through writing the screenplay, doing the research for the screenplay, and we started doing the visual effects and the development art for it, is when what I call the first revelation happened to me in the context of the story. And when I say I've had multiple revelations, those are revelations dealing with from just the story of the Anunnaki to now, wow, this is a lot more than just the Anunnaki. Okay, so here's the first piece of development art, and this went through a lot of iterations, and you can check out the free site. The video that I have on there kind of shows you a little more in the development. But what we did was, one of the core concepts that we had is we needed to stay true to archaeology as much as possible, because a lot of people just kind of go crazy with their designs. We wanted to really base them on fundamentally sound things. We wanted this to be as real as possible. And let me show you what we based this on too.
That looks like the ancient aliens.
The winged.
They show all the time. It's like the sun with wings or whatever you call it.
Right. Well, we base this obviously on the sun disk.
Right.
But what was really important is that we sort of reverse engineered. Let me dig up the original picture here.
It's like a disc, showing a disc, and then to make it people know that it flies, it has wings. Or
well,
something like
I mean,
that,
it's based on the original sculpture of the wing disc. The wing disc is an iconic sort of emblem that's been for many thousands of years, going back from the Sumerians, the Akkadians, all the way through the Egyptians, had different versions of the wing disc.
That looks pretty cool, though.
He's gonna.
Okay, well, you know what? I can just bring it up here. So this was a little teaser we put together, but this is if you look behind our logo here, this is the original ancient carving that we took this from. Now there's a whole bunch of different designs of this. There's lots of different variations, and we actually built a bunch, which we don't have time to go into now, but we actually have many 3D working designs of a lot of these. But this one was particularly interesting to us because this one kind of resembled something that looked like it was flight worthy. And if you look at this, you can see that gonna go back here. Okay, so you can see that we're pretty spot on with that looks like the carving. And the idea we had for all of these, and this is the sort of the common thread that runs through all of these different modules here, is that we took the stance that these were not fictitious made-up things. These were, what if somebody from 5,000 years ago was looking up in the sky and seeing something and trying to depict what they saw. Same thing from the biblical context. What if the Bible wasn't written as a, inferred or kind of dreamt story? It was people trying to describe something the way that they saw it back then, which would be impossible to describe now. You know,
Right.
I give this story in the little video series that I do. I had a couple conversations with some friends of mine who were very religious people, but they were very open-minded people. And one of the conversations that we had where they were telling me about the book of Revelations, and they were actually reading passages of Revelations to me. And in some of the passages they were reading to me, one was about the apocalypse, and they talk about, and I don't remember the wording, and you guys can help me if I don't get the wording correctly. But here's the general concept: is something to the effect of mountains coming out of the sea, and fire scorches the sky, and all the water turns bitter, and all the animals and plants die. And now, you take that context and you say, okay, it sounds like your typical prophecy kind of language. But here I am trying to keep an open mind. Okay, what would this be if this was a person from 5,000 years ago today? Now, I grew up in Miami in the 60s, where we grew up during the time of the Cuban Missile Crisis. And I remember as a kid being told to do the drills where you hide under your desk and watch these movies of Poseidon missiles coming out of the ocean. And what does it look like if you're from 5,000 years ago and you don't know what this is? You see the tip of a Poseidon missile come out of the ocean. It looks like a mountain coming out of the sea. You see the nuclear explosion. It looks like fire scorching the sky and fire raining down. And then we all know radioactive fallout creates what they could call bitter water, which you could almost say this was like somebody teleported to modern day being shown a movie of the same movie I was shown as a kid. You know, I mean, this really was pretty accurate, really. So going on that kind of relative logic, again, we took this ship design based on the ancient Sumerian carvings, and our goal was to say, okay, we need to keep this exactly like the carvings are done. So if these are like the carvings, how would this thing fly? And, well, it looks like it definitely could glide pretty well, but it really doesn't look like it would do too good from a vertical takeoff atmospheric kind of thing. If this thing was going straight up, you got a lot of air resistance on the wings that would kind of just crush those as they're taking off, unless they did like a 90-degree vertical takeoff like this, which also seems kind of strange and unlikely. But the first thing hit us, we're looking at this going, wow, you know, the edges of these wings look like a Chinese fan. And what would happen if we had the ability, like in modern fighters, to reconfigure the wings, where the wings fold in, right?
Yeah, that's cool.
But here's where revelation number one hit us. The first time we did this animation, and we pulled the wings in, here's what we're left with.
Disc.
This is pretty much every stereotypical UFO you've ever seen.
Yep. And you know something about the disc? If it's gonna be like that, like where our jets can't, and you have the wings and it creates drag, the disc is less drag, can go through the atmosphere a lot faster, and not make a noise or break a sonic, barrier. So I mean that it's perfect,
right,
for that.
So right there, that was sort of our first revelation, was that we all kind of sat there and looked at each other when we pulled the wings in on this thing, because we said, okay, well, now it's not just a story about the Anunnaki. Now we have a connection between Anunnaki and UFOs, and we have further connections that develop later on. But I'm going to jump to some additional 3D sets here. So, where do you house these things?
Cool.
If these things are, you imagine some of these would be huge. If you take any of the stories that any of these other writers talk about to be valid in any way, shape, or form, my kind of view is in the context of the story. Like airplanes, you'd have big ones, you'd have small ones, you'd have ones for cargo, you'd have ones for jet fighters, that kind of thing. So where would you house these things? And if these things were really in existence today, again, in the context of a story, where would be the only place you could hide these things? Because someone must have stumbled upon one and found one at some point.
Underground.
And as we kind of can just infer from our own, our own history, our own human history, we tend to hide big strategic military bases, missile silos, all those kind of things. We hide them underground. So we said, okay, well, how do we hide these underground? And we decided on this idea.
Dang, that's cool.
And this is we call this Marduk's Lair.
This is Donald Marshall's hotel.
Yeah. And in it, we've got probably 15 of these wing discs in different stages. One up here, and these other ones kind of here, stored with the wings pulled in. And now what was cool, kind of going back and forth between this is in development, but the stuff that we've been wanting to present to people now, the stuff that we're wanting to be able to show people, it's always been my idea not to just show a movie on the screen, but I want something immersive that people can go through. Now, this is a full 3D set, and if I put this into shaded view here, I'll kind of show you.
Some interference here, I don't know. From what?
I don't know, try resetting that thing and see if that's what it is.
You can see we can travel through this thing.
It's a laptop.
Yeah, I think so too. Huh.
This is a big set, so it's taking a minute to redraw here. Okay. So you can see there's like a lot to this thing.
Wow, man, it's sweet.
But we can move through the set. You can see here's all the other wing discs here. And you can see it's a pretty intricate design thing. Now, from a movie standpoint, this is really cool. But what I thought is cooler, and what my original idea has always been, is this, which is to be able to. And now here's this is Facebook, and this is not. I have this up for some people to see, but I'm going to be giving you guys the link to be able to show people. This is using a bunch of different technologies all kind of mashed together to be able to do this. And if you take a look at this, this is actually a virtual spherical environment that you can just open up your browser and look through and look around this environment. And if you have it on your smartphone, you can actually use the VR version of this, where you can actually use it like a window and look around the scene using your phone.
Wow, that's really cool.
Move the cord around right there. Don't pull it out. But
okay, so let me jump to another one here. I'll just run through a couple.
I think it's from the resources.
The what?
The resources inside the computer can't handle the graphics that is coming out of it. You know what I mean? Like
right. Oh, I see what you're saying.
And it's affecting the sound quality.
Huh.
Yeah.
Okay, this is. I'll just run through a bunch of the virtual sets, and all of these we're going to be doing as immersive kind of things where you can actually jump in and look around in them too, which is kind of the idea. This is the inside one of the modules of the International Space Station. This is Mars and the Mars rover, which plays a little interesting piece of the story. This is NORAD control.
Wow, that is really cool.
Yeah, and again, all of these, I'll jump to wireframe here. All of these are full. This is not just a picture. All of these are full, full environments. So you can really quickly get an idea of how much work and how complicated it is to kind of, create all this stuff. And this stuff is all created to be able to do, scenes in the movie where we actually have live actors in here, and we need to put them into a scene like this here. Let's just jump back to color mode.
See, Star Trek would have loved that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
They could have built like a giant ship and then everybody walking around in it and not even have really a set, right? Like.
Okay, so now another thing that we had to do was we wanted to get the archaeology right too. So that involved some scenes that we did in ancient Sumeria. This one we'll get into in just a minute.
It's Bigfoot's baby brother.
Yeah. We've got, this is Mount Ararat. This is actually a NASA digital elevation map from the Space Shuttle Radar Topography mission that we pulled to create the actual geometry for Mount Ararat. And here's one of the ancient step pyramids.
Wow.
Here's one of the sci-fi we have a couple sci-fi scenes. These are actual sci-fi elements that we added to the story that really don't correlate with the Anunnaki stuff, but we kind of needed them to tie the story together, which would be this one, and just to kind of show you some of the cool sci-fi sets. And again, all of these I'm going to make available for people to be able to kind of walk around or navigate around it and check them out. So let's get to some of the ones that deal with the biblical tie-ins now. The first one would be the Ark and dealing with Noah's Ark story. And, you know, when we talk about Noah's Ark, and I'll just briefly just kind of jump back to anybody who has any kind of notion that these are coincidental relationships between the biblical version and the Ziusudra epic or any of the other following versions of the story. Let's talk about a couple of the correlations. The first one is you have in both versions of the story, man is evil and needs to be punished. So that's number one, and I just kind of numbered these out. Then God sends a flood to exterminate mankind in both stories in some way, shape, or form. Now in the Ziusudra one, it doesn't really say that God sent the flood like it does in the biblical one, but it said that there will be a flood. So he's, and in both cases, God in both stories selects an individual and small group of people for the task of building an ark and surviving the flood. So again, we have another correlation in both. The next one's really interesting in that God gives detailed instructions in both the biblical version and the Sumerian version, detailed instruction on how to build this craft. Dimensions and everything, which is really pretty interesting. Both say that they sealed the boat with bitumen, which perhaps that's something that was common in the day to seal boats with, but nevertheless, the fact that it's specifically listed in both and kind of spelled out was kind of interesting. Then in both stories, the flood was carried out through an extended period of time. Little different in how long the time was, but nevertheless, it gives very good correlation that the same types of things happen, that the water from the ground came up and the water came from the sky as well. So it talks about the water coming sort of the same way. Both the Ark occupants send out birds to try to find if dry land appears, and both send multiple times birds. They send the first one out, and the first ones come right back. Send the next ones out, the next ones come back, and after a while they send one out and it doesn't come back. Both Ark comes to rest on a mountain, though different mountains, different areas from where they talk about. But in the biblical version, there's some little discrepancies in that they really talk about that they come to rest on the mountains of Ararat, right. Or most people think it's the mountain of Mount Ararat, which the mountains of Ararat is more of a range of mountains. But nevertheless, the Sumerian version is a little different in where it is. It's a little bit of a different area, but close enough. Next, the occupants exit the Ark, and in both cases, they both make offerings to the god or gods. They make big feast kind of offerings. In both scenarios, God gives verbal reflection and promises never to repeat the flood. In both stories, God chooses a symbol of remembrance about the event. In the biblical version, he points to a rainbow, and in the Sumerian version, he talks to a multicolored necklace, which, again, there you can kind of see the correlation as well. And in both cases, God blesses the occupants afterwards. So you've got 13 different correlations between the two stories, and people say, oh, well, that's not that many. But if you think of it in terms of like a combination lock, and what the probability would be that you would get both with that many correlations in two different stories from two different time periods, thousands of years apart, and it comes to like 1 in a trillion or something.
Right.
You know, so it's really pretty definitive that they're coming from the same place. So that being said, as our sort of let's call it within the context of the story, we've got some good ideas about the way that it played out and that these two stories are correlated. Well, if that's so, there's some additional things we can infer. In a few versions of the story, it doesn't say that God said to bring 2 of every animal on board. In fact, a few of the versions of the story say the gods tell them to bring the seed of every animal on board. Now, that's a huge difference. That's a huge, in my mind, from a plausibility standpoint, from a story. You've got one where people always say, "Oh, the reason that they blow the whole Noah's Ark thing out of possibility is because it's physically impossible for them to bring 2 of every animal on the planet into an ark, and especially an ark of this size." And then they go into big gyrations on how big the ark is and how big it would need to be and how much food that they would need, and on and on and on. However, if you take the original story version, where they're not bringing every animal on board, they're bringing the seed of every animal on board, you get something that might look like, and I was talking to Jeff about this last night, but you get something that may look like this. And this is, again, another one of our digital sets. Tell me when that comes up for you.
Try that.
Well, no, it's see, when I turn him down, it's the laptop. It's not the mixer.
Man, that's a drag. I need to take that other laptop home.
Yep, you do.
Is that coming through there?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we see it.
Man, that is cool.
And so here's another set that we're gonna put online that everybody will kind of be able to look through. And we've really we went so far as to think that maybe these things were barcode scanned. And I talked to Jeff about this yesterday, which is that this was interesting when we originally created these models and this concept. But I found out over the past year that something like this actually already exists.
Kidding.
And I believe where is that, Jeff? Is that Norway
in Norway, in between Norway, a little island off of Norway, the Seed Vault.
Yeah, and they basically have created an ark. So the concept for the ark, and again, what I've arrived at over going through all of these stories and going through the backstory and the original ancient stories is not the disapproval of the biblical stories, but more of that they kind of mesh together very nicely and kind of all prove each other. Science proves the biblical, and biblical proves the science as well.
It does. Especially everybody, the one that gets me is the blood part, right?
I'm sorry?
The blood. Everything's like by blood, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Okay, now, and yesterday, I think it was, I listened to a video or watched a video on DNA. And the DNA, they found out recently that they can put in a gram of water, they could put 5 petabytes inside a gram of water and keep it like almost indefinitely. Right?
Yeah, I saw that they were talking about that from data storage. organic data storage.
Right, yeah, man, it was like, whoa. And that's all about the blood again. The DNA comes from the blood, out of the blood. I mean, and so all this stuff, like, really does verify itself.
It all does wind up correlating, and the deeper you get into it, the more you research, the more you start seeing not things that disprove each other or jumping back and forth between, oh, now I see that's not true, that's not true. You wind up seeing that there's even more connections than you originally, had in mind. Right. So with this all said, you've gotten to see some of the sets that we've done, some of the different crazy locations and virtual environments that we've done. But my whole goal of this was to be able to really bring this stuff, and not only just the stuff from the movie, but the original research type stuff, and let people see this stuff for themselves. So I had told Jeff the story that when we were filming, we filmed at this archaeological museum before they closed their doors. And before they did close their doors, I had asked the director, I knew that this place was no longer going to exist, and I said, I had this concept at the time, would it be possible for me to do 3D scans or 360, high-res images, bring a turntable in and a blue screen and do some high-res images so that I could sort of, for posterity's sake, document these things, because they have, in the archaeological museum, they have the progression of skulls from, Neanderthal through all this, and I said, this would be a great thing, and I would love to be able to eventually present this, and I do use them in the movie, but I would love to present this in a way people could actually see this stuff for themselves. So again, with the advancements of technology, this is the kind of stuff that I'm looking to present and show people now. And let me show you what that kind of looks like, because this is really super cool stuff.
And then being able to pan around and stuff like that, that is too cool.
Even more than that, and this is not future stuff, this is stuff we're doing right now. So the funny part of the story was the guy was kind of distraught that they were closing his museum, and he said, you know what, just take these to your studio and then bring them back when you're done with them. He trusted me because we did a lot of stuff together. But he hands me this box of skulls, and they're not real. They're museum cast, but they're still worth a fortune. And I'm driving home, and as I'm driving, I said, oh my God, if I get pulled over by the police, how am I going to explain having a giant box of skulls in there? So anyway, luckily I didn't, but here's what I did. I went and took them back and did high resolution 360-degree turntable scans of each of these different skulls. Wow. And each one of these has, you see the original museum markings on these. Each one has some interesting features that modern skulls don't have. Some of the things like the dorsal crest that these ancient skulls have. That I'll just really quickly run through. Here's a couple different ones. And now this is all fine and well that I have them, and it would be fine and well if I showed these in a movie, but my goal was to do something more with them, which is using photogrammetry technology. We can build a point cloud from these using all of these images strung together. And then from the point cloud, you see here's the point cloud. From that, we can build a mesh. And then using some cool new technology that we've been kind of working with for a while now, I'll jump back to our Facebook page. I can now send this to you. And you can look at this for yourself. And this is the idea behind it. And not only do things like, a lot of this stuff is inaccessible. You can't find the stuff, even if you look at it, it's in a glass case somewhere. But how cool would it be for me to send you an actual Sumerian clay tablet with cuneiform on it?
That would be really cool.
Now the skulls that you showed us, those were replicas of what the museum were able to cast, correct?
Yeah, well, these are, obviously these are famous skulls that are dug up from from some ancient site, and then what they do is the original is taken and they do like forensic. You can see the original pieces, and then they fill in the pieces that they can't find. That's this other material in here, and then they create these museum quality casts for the museums. And I imagine they keep the original locked away in some vault somewhere. But when they send these to a museum, there are some museums that have originals, but most museums are going to get these museum quality casts. So these aren't original skulls, but they're pretty darn close and give you enough of the detail that you would not be able to see this otherwise.
Now, on top of that skull that you're spinning right now, the on the very top, what would you call that?
This?
Yeah.
Sagittal crest.
Yeah, this is the dorsal crest.
Okay.
Dorsal crest?
Or yeah, it might be called.
And that just throws back.
It's almost like the monkeys.
Well, yeah, when I was a kid watching the Slee Stack on Lost.
The Slee Stacks, exactly.
On Land of the Lost. That's what I see right there.
So now, jumping here to a little bit of, I won't go too much into this, but for our movie, we wanted to be able to address, the creation of Adam, the missing link. We wanted to create sort of some of these ideas too. And again, we didn't want to just kind of randomly run wild with this. We wanted to base it on at least as much science as we could figure out. So what we did was we took these kind of things, and we know these are not like the missing link. We know this is a specific time period. We know this is a specific area of the world, and each of these skeletal remains is that. But what we have the ability to do as visual effects artists, and this is where we kind of in no way claim to be scientists. This is sort of pseudoscience, but I imagine it would be similar in some regards to scientific method, and that is we can take something like this, that we created a piece of geometry, which is a point cloud of points and polygons put together, and we could extrapolate some data out of this. Similar to the way they build cars these days, where they can actually modify the actual geometry to arrive at something. And one way we can do that, and I'll just kind of draw you up a mock-up here, so close down some of these.
We got about 12 minutes left in the show. So, maybe we'll go into that another time, and let me just jump to something else then. Can't believe it's only been 2 hours.
What I'll jump into is the end of what I was getting ready to show you on how we arrived at this. We wanted to depict something that...
Oh, yeah, this part. I like this part.
Of the in-between what we know and what we don't know. Let's put it there. And here's actually the scene from the movie where in the Anunnaki version of the story, the god Enki takes an existing hominid that exists at the time and takes Anunnaki DNA, and using surrogate birthing mothers implants the DNA from this hominid into a birthing mother who creates the first Adam. And what we did was we took this hominid that was from this time, and we actually try to create the scene using as real a scenario as we could to show what this would actually look like. And you see they're like trying to calm him down while they do the and here's the blue screen version, and this kind of shows how the scene's put together using a 3D version.
Dude,
welcome to special effects.
Yeah. Man, that is so close to what the aliens are doing right now. When they abduct people and we interview these abductees, these aliens are taking the sperma or the seed of the woman and stuff like that, or the eggs, and making something with it. That's the part we don't know. All we know is they're taking these people, and that's what they're after, and that's today.
Right.
And I mean, we've talked to I don't know how many people that. I mean, what you just showed could be like today. Which is weird.
And, you do get into some crazy. Again, I tend to think that it wanders into the realm of disinformation more than anything, because I actually interviewed one of the Morpheus calls was a caller who was abducted, and it was a big eye opener for me. But the question remains: are these aliens that are abducting people, or are these us that are abducting people? Right. And really, why? It would seem to me that that if you're going to abduct somebody, there are a lot easier ways of doing it than flying overhead and sucking somebody up into a spaceship, in the middle of Missouri somewhere or something. It would seem that there is a lot easier ways of getting people if that's what if that's what they're after. But it's not my forte.
It seems, and I know we're really short on time, but a lot of the abductees that we talk to, it's been happening to them. It's almost like a generational thing, like family. Like they were taking their grandpa, but their grandpa wouldn't talk about it because they made fun of him. And then their dad, and then their mom, and then them, and then now their kids, and they go right through the walls and all kinds of really weirdness,
So where do we stand on your series? Because right now you are giving out the link, and I have it on my wall right now on Facebook, you guys.
And everybody on here was asking about it, in fact.
If you go to my personal Facebook wall, the link is there. I will be posting it, or Danny, if you can get it and repost it on the Paranormal Central like page. He's going to be removing that link, and it will be deactivated in about a week. So this is now your only chance. Now, the series that is going to be giving for free, what is included in that series? What are you going to show? Is it just personal stuff that you're going to talk about, or are you actually going to have a 30-minute part of the movie or the series, or what exactly is?
What I'm doing with that is I'm really trying to give everybody a good taste of what we're capable of doing now, what my original goal was in trying to give this, and actually simply just try to give that to them now. Just try to give them a little piece of what I've been trying to do all this time, and let everybody see and understand, while the movie is still by no means disappeared, there were people started to have the theory that, well, maybe this movie never really existed, isn't really real. This gives you a good indication and hopefully enough evidence that it really is real. There's a ton of it, but even though that's kind of a very muddy water for me to try to get through, I realize that I can start providing the stuff that I've actually wanted to provide from the beginning, and start doing that now. So
okay, but people are going to ask. They want to see something. They want to see actors. They want to see sets. Now, obviously, you haven't started any of that yet. So
wait. What do you mean I haven't started any of that yet?
Well, as far as the series goes, the movie series with actors and all that, or have you?
Well, the movie.
The movie's in the can.
No, it isn't.
Huh?
Yeah, the movie's been in the can for.
Yeah, but you don't have access to that movie.
Well, okay, I don't have access to be able to talk about the business side of the movie, but I do have access through because I do visual effects, and that's part of my job.
Right.
And I teach visual effects.
I
can show, and I've just showed you. Probably 15 of the actual sets for the movie, including, you just saw a scene with the primate. That was one of the actors in the movie. I can show you.
Okay. So I'm
I don't want to give away the whole movie.
So right. So I'm misunderstanding then, because when your NDA, when you signed, I felt that movie, anything involved in that movie, was gone.
No.
Oh.
No, not by a long shot. What that prevents me from doing is from discussing anything having to do with the business of the movie.
Okay, basically. so were you contracted out by a in Hollywood people to make the movie? What the way I see things is that when you're under contract, anything you film and make for that movie doesn't belong to you. It belongs to, the guys in Hollywood.
That's correct, and that would normally be true, and that is true of the people that, the artists that I've trained and the artists that I've contracted, they are under NDA to me for exactly what you just said. However, I am also the writer, producer, and director of the movie.
Right.
So I have ownership rights in addition to being under an NDA. So there are things that I can do that the artists who worked on the movie cannot do. So, and part of my agreement, because I have contractual agreement aside from the NDA, is that I need to be able to show people promotional stuff for the movie. I need to be able to show artists how to do things with the movie. I need to be able to publicize the movie. So under sort of that area of my ownership rights, I can show some stuff. And you know, the dividing line, Jeff, is really this. It's, do you want to give away the whole movie, and then when the whole movie comes out, everybody already knows everything about it?
Right.
Which that's not smart.
Okay, so the movie then that you were working on in 2005, for example,
Right.
You own then the what you have right now on computer or on disc or whatever, but now you're modifying it for this era to make it better. But so what you're telling me then is you are going to release a full length 90-minute in how long of a time?
Okay, here, let me rephrase it better to where it makes more sense. Because this was originally, the movie itself was supposed to be part of a larger body of work from the very beginning.
Right.
That was always in the plan. Because of that, I have the ability to use pieces of that to do just that, to show a larger body of work, which is what this new series is going to be. And so I can use the stuff that we created, you know, of course, without giving away the whole movie. I can use some of the things that we developed in the original version of the movie to show on this series, so that people can actually see a lot of this stuff, and also see it more in the context. It won't be in the context of a science fiction like the movie will be. It will be more in the context of a documentary kind of series, kind of, you know, more under that umbrella, I would say.
Okay.
But it's you know, a lot. Some of the stuff we will be able to use of that to show. That gives us the ability to get this stuff out and show it to people right now, rather than having to start developing the stuff. This stuff, we've been developing it for years, so we've got a huge amount of assets and things that we already can use and show, which is a great, it's a great to be able to do that. But we will also be adding new stuff. We'll be adding a lot of new stuff. Most specifically, the stuff that I'm really looking forward to adding on top is, now that we've got the technology under wraps, in addition to just being able to show people stuff from the movie, being able to get actual artifacts and be able to get actual locations. How cool would it be? You know, Michael Tellinger, I just watched a series that he did where he's talking about finds that they found, and they found these crypts in these mines in South Africa. How much cooler would it be than listening to him tell about it? Would it be for us to be able to navigate around and look around there for yourself? Or you heard about the little spaceship plane in South America that they found as an artifact. How much cooler would it be than you just seeing a childlike drawing to be able to look at it like I just showed you the skull? So my goal is, with this new series, to be able to start getting, you know, boots on the ground, scan all these artifacts, scan these locations, start bringing all this stuff and being able to, you know, my ideal is, rather than showing you a 90-minute movie, is to be able to send you a link to be able to just really see this stuff yourself.
Cool. Okay. Man, we are out of time. 2 hours went by quick, dude.
Give the if you have the website thing, can you say it? What it is? You know, like suchandsuch.com or something like that. That everybody.
People who are not on Facebook, how can they get to that link?
Because there's people all over the world listening right now. And
right. They can't as of yet, but that's what this new series is all about. This new series, the best thing I can tell them right now is to subscribe to the new series, because I'll be making all those links available through there. And I'll be
That's
making
the
them all
link.
available for
What
you.
is
well.
the?
Yeah,
what
and
is
that's the link we're talking about. Could they go like to a website where that link is located, or is this just
No, because this is a free series only for our in-house people. This is not like for the general public, really.
Right.
So what I have is a blind sign up
Got
where they
it.
basically just put their name on it. It's a separate list only for these people, and they'll get an email that has a link to each video as it comes out. It'll be sent directly to them. This is not for the general public.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, the
Got
new
it.
series when we get done later will be.
Okay. So and right now that link, like I said, is on my Facebook wall, and we'll put it on the Paranormal Central Facebook wall. But he will only have it activated for about a week, and then he's going to turn it off. So right now you need to go and sign up, and he's only going to allow it through our, for us to promote it to our fans can all over the world. If you guys want to get on the mailing list and do it, so
I'm getting on it.
you better get it. You better get on it. So, all right, John. Hey, I appreciate you coming on here and talking. I know you've been gone for a long time. And there's just so much to talk about. You and I were talking yesterday that we can go into disinformation and trolling people who don't want this stuff to get out, and there's so much that we can continue to talk about. But we'll have to make that another show for sure.
Yeah, I hope I was able to sort of encapsulate. I know we had a lot of.
There was a lot of information you threw in there, and people were going, "Oh my God!" But you know what? You've been gone for such a long time, and you had to throw all this out there, and you had to.
And check out the new in the new series. I'm able to do that in half hour, 45-minute formats where you'll get a piece of this, and you can actually go through it, and I can explain it a little more in depth. And actually, I'm trying to pull this stuff on Skype and show you, but on the online series, I can actually show it to you a little bit better. And most excitingly, the thing that hopefully I really get across here is the end goal here, which we're already here, we're already doing it, is to where I can start sending you, instead of sending you a video, sending you, okay, here's the new batch of evidence we've got for this month. It's, we've been to Istanbul and we've gone through their artifacts and scanned everything they have, and be able to send you all kinds of cool stuff to look at and put the pieces together for yourself.
Okay.
And as we talked about, I'm really excited. It's a pleasure to meet you guys, and I look forward to being able to do some of the other stuff that maybe we'll let the cat out of the bag on some ideas that we have some additional stuff too.
Right. What looks like we'll probably be working with John in the future. Like I said, we're just not a talk show. We're also investigating, and I talked to John, and it looks like the TV show thing is really. It looks like it's going to happen pretty soon. Something happened within the past week that's going to allow us to move up to the next step. And now word is out, and people are freaking out because of what just happened. And I won't be able to talk about that probably for another 3 weeks.
He's under an NDA, guys.
So, it's going to blow your mind, you guys. So things are happening for us, and I want to bring John into the picture somehow. We can incorporate his work and what he does in special effects, and I think it's just going to make our show much better and very different than all the other shows out there. So, John,
Thank you, bro.
I can't wait to work with you in the near future. Let's bring you back at a later date. Let's continue talking back and forth, and I will keep you in the loop on what's going on my side, and you do the same, and let's do this.
Very good. It's a pleasure talking to you guys. Look forward to having some more cool stuff to show you next time.
Sounds good, man.
Thank
All right,
you,
you take
man.
care, John. We'll talk to you
All
soon.
right.
Okay, see ya. Okay, bye. All right, that was John. And I know
That was so fun.
there was so much stuff on there that he threw at us, but he's been gone for over 10 years. All right. A lot of people on the chat were, I wanted him to do all the talking, guys, because he had so much. You imagine if I would have butt in, he would have not been able to really say what he wanted to say. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that he wanted to get out, and he still didn't finish.
You know what's kind of cool is because we're on the internet, we just hang on a little longer here and talk about a little bit, because I think there was some confusion I think even you were a little bit confused.
Yeah, well, because in 1995 when he came out, they were filming a movie, and I thought that is what his goal was a movie. Okay, but apparently right now, because of his research that he did for the movie, he has a lot of stuff that he wants to show everybody. And I think that's what the first part of the series is going to be about. He's going to put out what he's been finding and real evidence archives that I mean, from museums and from digs or whatever, that the only way to show everybody what he's finding is to do it in 3D in the program that he actually invented and put together.
Well, he was saying, like, his series, okay, the movie's done, all right, and a lot of people don't believe it still.
Right.
So his series, he's going to bring out, like some of those sets where they showed, that he was showing, where you can move around and stuff like that. That's the actual sets they use in the movie. Okay?
Right.
That's going to be in his series, proving there's a movie.
Okay.
And then also the technology that they have.
Right.
I mean, that is so cutting edge. Nobody is doing that at all anywhere.
But
so you will be able to see some of that technology.
Sure, but everybody wants to see a movie.
Yeah, well, only as he'll be able to talk about how
but that's
where
not,
they're at with the movie, but only it's not ready to be out yet.
Okay, see, that's what I was trying to get from him, and he wasn't really telling me.
He can't tell you.
Well, see,
the NDA. Remember, he said the NDA was covering the business aspect.
Well, so then, how long is this NDA going to go for? I mean, he didn't tell us the time limit on this movie. It could be another 10 years, another 15 years.
Yeah, I don't think it's that far.
Well, I wanted to know. I wanted to know, but he couldn't tell me.
That was what everybody.
Well, sure, because everybody is.
Man, that NDA needs to be cut up.
Everybody who's been wanting him to come forward and work, they wanted to hear, where is the movie? Nobody believed him. Where is the movie? Still, to this day, granted, I see stuff that he showed us that doesn't prove to me that there's a movie. And John, don't get mad at me or anything, but. I want to see a movie. not unless you pull me aside and you show me something, I'm going to go, okay. Then
he showed a clip and showed the blue screen and everything. I mean, you're not going to go through all the amount of money that it would take to set up a quick little shot like that. Like, you know what I mean? That's a lot of work just to make that ape-looking dude. You seen the blue thing on his head?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you're not going to do that just for a little clip.
Let me make sure the volumes are up because I had to turn up and turn things down.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna try to work on that.
I think it's just the laptop itself, dude. Because
it probably is.
So you need to take that other laptop home and just because that's newer than that one. So that one, Emerald, that I purchased off of her.
Well, I think there's a lot of stuff running in the background, and
it was quiet, and then it. Like you said, it sounded like possibly the fan was going out or something, So I don't know, but that's got to stop. We got to get rid of that thing.
Yeah, we do.
So you need to make something work until next week. All right.
I will.
Okay. All right.
Hopefully.
Before we go, my son, and
wait, let me see. What? I was gonna see if there's anything anybody had in here. They were all pretty much on the same page.
Right. And like I said, he's making a movie, all right, and he has done research, and he was putting out what he was finding. Now, people who are very religious, okay, they were taken back to what he was posting, what he was finding, because when you have a belief, you're pretty much going to stick to it, all right? All those Christians out there who were on the chat, a lot of them were like, saying that he is trying to get people away from the Bible. The way he was, the way John was talking is that he was trying to, get the similarities between the Anunnaki and the Bible, right? And I think, people were taking offense because some of the things he was saying about the Bible, it was just ticking a lot of people off. I can understand where you guys are coming from, but I wanted him to come out and basically say his piece, say, what, the research he was doing on the Anunnaki, what he was finding, and he was presenting to you tonight. If he puts out a movie, you don't have to watch it. That's fine. But in 2005, there's literally thousands and thousands of people who know of Jon and knew what he was doing back then and wanted him to come out and say what is the next step to this movie.
With a little research, all you have to do is type his name in Google, and you could read a lot of that. I mean, it's all over the internet of these people that are saying exactly what you just said.
Right.
I mean, it's all over.
Oh, yeah.
I had no idea, and I had to do a little research on him, and so I learned right away.
Yeah, people don't want him to continue on what he's doing. His task.
I want him to.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. It doesn't have to change your belief.
Right, that's right.
It doesn't. If you believe in a higher power, if you believe in God and Jesus, well, then so be it. That's the way it's going to be. Let him put out this movie. If you think it's just a movie, guys. I mean, you go see movies all the time in the theater. It doesn't have to change your belief or the way you think because you've seen a movie. Well,
I tell you, like, if I said that the Marvel Avengers was the actual, like, they tell you what they're doing in the movies, right? What their goal is.
Right.
What if I told you the Marvel Avengers was the end goal of what we were talking about when they abduct the alien abduction thing, like that? Like that's what they're doing. Is creating people like that, and they're getting you ready for when one of these things lands in your street, and it might not be the good guy that in the movie.
Right.
I mean, I'm just saying.
Yeah. I mean, like he said, disinformation. When they started this information to the people, now you just don't know what is fact and what is not. You don't.
Got to do your own homework.
But even that is not going to tell you absolutely nothing, because what you think is the truth is far from it, possibly. Yeah. I mean, it's just, this is why we're here. We're here to present you different avenues and different theories, and it's up to you to take what Jon just told you and showed you. But he didn't really. I don't see how he can. What he showed tonight can convince somebody to totally not believe in the Bible and God. He did not do that tonight. Basically, what he's doing is he's showing you the stuff that he's going to make a movie about.
Yeah.
All right, that's all he's doing.
And he said it was a fiction movie.
Yeah,
it's based on facts, but it's a fiction movie.
But he's a storyteller. That's what he does. Yep. He's gonna tell a story. Doesn't mean that he's doing this story to change your attitude towards the belief in God or Jesus. That's not what he's doing. All right? So, don't take that as a negative thing. I mean, again, we're going to show you here things that will upset you and things that will make you go,
Well, I could tell you I'm real religious. Every morning I make a cup of coffee. And every time I come over here, I bring a cup of coffee religiously. Yeah.
So, okay. All right. Before I go, my son was at a carnival this morning in Sanger at the church grounds, as a matter of fact, and he won what?
It's a religious thing.
Yeah. Check this out. It's funny. And he won this. Can you guys see this? It's a hammer. It has alien stuff all over it. Is this cool?
Pretty cool.
Now, guess what I'm going to use this for?
Ah!
When Alan gets out of line, I'm going to pound him one. That's funny. All right, you guys. Thank you guys for showing up. We'll be back next week. In a couple of weeks, on May the 1st, we're going to have a big thing happening here in the studio. Hope you guys turn out. Come back next week, all right? We're going to do it all over again. My name is Jeffrey Gonzalez with Ellen Thomas. You have been watching Paranormal Central. See ya.
Night, everyone.
You have been listening to Paranormal Central with Jeffrey Gonzalez and Alan Thomas. Broadcasting worldwide at paranormalcentral.net and on our... Stay tuned for next time. Remember to keep your eyes to the skies. And we hope you witness something you cannot explain.